Cornwall, a kind of place that you'd associate with things such as busy beaches, lush woodlands, and green rolling hills. Now I know this sounds generic, but what if I told you about the opposite, sometimes unspoken side of the story? A kind of story that the middle class aren't going to be singing about anytime soon. What I'm here to do is take you on a journey through the problems that the county is facing, furthermore reflecting on the impacts on similar situations throughout other parts of the nation as well. It's a sad sight, watching such beautiful areas and once bustling communities turn into, well, ghost towns. Why though? Why has this happened? To start answering our problem in the housing crisis, we have to reflect on the reasons to why we have reached this point. In the past year, the average house price rose by £100,000 in 8 postcodes in the UK. 3 of them were in Cornwall. If we dig a bit deeper into why the spike has occurred, there are a couple big reasons. First off, the amount of second home owners. As of October 2021, there are around 13,260 second homes reported in Cornwall. This number has actually dropped from 13,642 in 2020. Now, this might sound like some improvement, even if only by a bit. However, a reason for this number dropping, unfortunately, isn't due to second homeowners moving away. It's because they're instead converting their second homes into holiday lets. Great. Look at these empty streets. It might not seem like a major holiday destination now. However, just wait until summer. These streets will once again be alive, joyful, busy, and exciting. But for what? Like 3 months of the year? These homes lay dormant and empty for 70% of the year, all while taking up land and room that locals could be living in for 100% of it. It's just not fair. These so-called ghost towns, as the media refer to it as, leave behind a broken community that less people become part of. You feel bad for the locals who wish there was a bit more going on. To add to this, the holiday makers leave behind local businesses that, most of the time, need the customers in order to keep running. What I want to talk to you about today is what I think is an incredibly important topic that I want to bring more awareness to. I feel like a number of individuals my age do not realise how much the housing crisis will affect our generation. It is a serious problem that I want to dig deeper into. I'm here to focus on a specific area of our country and question how is this affecting their community, culture, and to see how they're dealing with it. I want to find out things such as why this is happening, what it's doing, and how we can tackle it. I want to tell you the story of a county with locals battling to stay in their home. It might just seem like a random string of numbers and letters to some, but to the local residents, PL27 is their postcode district. PL27 covers the areas of places such as Polesworth, Wadebridge, and Rock. What makes this postcode significant, you may ask? Well, this is one of the areas where the housing prices have jumped by £100,000 just in the past year. Although I've homed in on this specifically, I want to remind you that there is not a place in Cornwall currently that is not popular with buyers. You might have heard of Rock before. Situated opposite Padstow on the River Camel, the area has attracted many individuals to move there. With the likes of Gordon Ramsay and even the royal family calling their place their second home, there's no wonder as to why house prices have risen here. Padstow is another area that is incredibly popular with second homes and tourism in general. It sits on the PL28 postcode, which is surrounded by PL27. Last year, Padstow was the place in Cornwall with the largest amount of second homes.
Two patients from the same family in England have tested positive for coronavirus. The first cases to be recorded in Britain.
A ninth person has tested positive for coronavirus in the UK.
The World Health Organization says Europe is now the epicenter of the global coronavirus pandemic.
It's been a tough couple of years for everyone. COVID-19 has tried to bring the world down. We've all had to face the hardships of the pandemic one way or another, but through it all, we still push forward. With the government ordering people to stay at home, the amount of wealthy individuals who have dreamed about living in their fancy houses while still being able to work became reality. The reality of the pandemic has had an impact on creating the coronavirus housing boom that Cornwall is facing. Although it's not the only reason it's happening, it's been a major key player.
It's not so much of a problem for my generation, but the next generations coming through are going to really struggle to buy or even rent homes in the future. I'm James Corey, and I'm semi-retired, do a couple of days work a week in a garage, and I'm a landlord.
There are massive consequences to this housing boom that many people don't seem to realise. The increase of housing prices has meant that there could be a world where individuals my age of 19 won't ever be able to afford a home. It's a sad truth. And what happens to those already struggling? There's a massive problem with the fact that a large amount of families and individuals are getting kicked out of their homes so that a house can be used as a holiday or second home. This isn't fair to the people that have spent their hard-earned money and are just trying to live their lives, and they're getting kicked out of their homes so wealthy individuals can have what they have, plus 10 million times more.
COVID has had a big impact on the house prices. I think it's made more people think, I want to move to the country, I want to move somewhere nice and live somewhere nice. They've realised that they can live on less than they were used to, do less, basically, especially with people working more from home now. It's understandable. If you're going to work from home, you want that home to be in as nice a place as possible.
We can't forget to mention that social media has also been a player in why this has become a problem. The number of posts that I see glorifying Cornwall and encouraging more and more people to come down and even live have definitely not helped. From the comments, I can see that many locals have tried to defend their county and deter the visitors. However, with an ongoing pandemic and people having to stay inside more than ever, I'm not surprised if they see all these posts. Of course, Cornwall is an absolutely stunning place. There are areas that sometimes don't even look like England because of the clean sandy beaches and blue water. However, the beautiful views have brought in more than just tourists. Occasionally, these tourists aren't just tourists anymore, but a Cornwall homeowner.
Eventually, the county will be just so full of holiday homes and Airbnbs that there will be very few people left that actually work in the county. I can see more and more people just basically living in caravans or mobile homes, people living in vans on the street in Newquay and other towns in Cornwall, just so that they can live and work in the county.
Pasties, Rattler, and Land's End. What do these three things have in common? Well, they're all proudly Cornish. Most Cornish locals are proud of their county and are trying to preserve the culture they do have. Unfortunately, With the amount of second homes that are starting to pop up around the place, and the fact that these second homeowners are usually from nowhere near Cornwall, it's clear to see why the locals are afraid their culture and heritage are being stripped from them. One example is the famous Cornish pasty. Every Brit has heard of a pasty, and also most know their tasty beginnings from Cornwall, hence the name Cornish pasty. These were invented back in the 17th century in order to keep the Cornish miners fed. Due to them being so far down, they wouldn't have time to resurface and have a proper lunch. In 2011, the Cornish pasty was given protected status by the European Commission in order to protect the jobs of those who make them. If a pasty wasn't produced in Cornwall, it isn't allowed to be marketed as a Cornish pasty. However, even with this, I feel as though many people still forget where these things come from. Now, what does this have anything to do with the housing crisis, you may ask? Well, now locals are fighting against the more privileged in order to keep their homes and stay in the county that a lot of people have grown up in and spent a large majority of their lives in. The wealthy are slowly moving into these towns and are trying to convince the locals they're one of them. Don't think they're buying it though. With a number of families and individuals moving from different parts of the country, it slowly chips away at the culture and heritage of Cornwall. What culture is there to preserve when there aren't any locals there to contribute to it?
A part of the problem as well is people sort of saying, oh, Cornwall relies on tourism, Cornwall needs tourism. That's absolute rubbish, to be fair. We've got farming, we've got fishing, we've got engineering works to rival anything in the world. Going forward, we've got lithium extraction processes, natural resources and whatever. We can rival any county in the country, so why would we not cope without tourism?
Businesses that have stood for decades could see closure, as the winter months in some areas in Cornwall show a dwindling number of individuals due to second homeowners moving straight back to where they actually came from when the sun isn't shining anymore. Even with the increase of second homeowners, local Cornwall communities still stand strong, with the hope that things will get better in the coming years. When 1 in 25 people own a second home in Cornwall, which is 5 times the national average, you know there's a massive problem. Instead of renting out your properties at absurd rates, why not keep them at fair prices so that the locals that are looking for a place to live can actually continue to live in their home? Locals shouldn't have to be forced out of their own county because they can no longer afford to even live there when thousands of more privileged individuals are taking away the place they call home. It's not fair. Once again, through it all, the Cornish stay strong. Places like Padstow have traditions that date back many decades. To celebrate the return of spring, the locals of Padstow decorate the town in beautiful buntings and flags. Furthermore, they raise a maypole in the centre of the town, which is also decorated to perfection. Traditionally, the locals wear blue or red according to which oss you're associated with. An oss, by the way, is their way of saying horse. I was lucky enough to go down and see what it was like firsthand. My first impressions was that there was a strong sense of community. Having been postponed for 2 years means that the Padstonians were ready to celebrate more than ever. These guys mean business too, by the way. Last year, during the pandemic, the Padstow locals wrote a letter to a family they knew were in a second home. They voiced their concerns on the pandemic, as well as the housing crisis. This resulted in the family selling their home and moving away. This goes to show how serious these locals are taking this issue. Now, back to May Day. From my experience of being there, what I learned was that even though the number of locals is slowly dwindling due to our problem, they still fight and celebrate what they love. They didn't and won't ever break tradition. Even with a heritage that is eroding, they look at the bright side and do something that will bring joy to everyone. I created a social media post on my film to ask if there were any locals that had something to say about the topic in question. I went on the r/Cornwall subreddit as I believed this would be the best place to gather the most relevant responses. The amount of replies that I garnered was incredibly surprising. However, this goes to show that there really is a problem at stake. In one of the replies that I received, I spoke to someone who went by Nat. She explained to me that she's Cornish and that her family lived in Cornwall for many, many years. She told me her story and how she was someone who was trying to find a new place from an increasingly volatile situation. She waited on the housing register for 2 years to no avail. She added that she had to give up in the end and decided to move to Scotland, where she has since found more hope. She believes that in our current situation, the prospects are much better where she is now.
It would be nice to think that more landlords would do that, but money talks. My properties are rent out for £680 a month. During the height of the season, you could get double that a week. And people just aren't prepared to take that sort of financial hit for their conscience. I guess I'm just the dumb one.
I stood on Cape Cornwall in the sun's evening glow, on Tune Hill at Newlyn, to watch the fishing fleets go, watch the sheep wheels at Giver as they spun around, and heard the men singing as they go underground, and no one will ever move me from this land, for this is my Cornwall, and this is my home.
We finally reached the end of the line. I've now discussed with you today what's currently happening in the county, why it's a problem, and how it affects the rest of the nation as well. What I'm now going to bring to your attention is a handful of things that could be done to solve the issue. However, it's unfortunately not as simple as 1, 2, 3. By now though, I feel as if we've already learnt that. Even with the number of solutions there could be, things still aren't likely to change until there's more awareness on the situation and when the second homeowners finally see the damage that they're causing. Although I've heard from all the locals that the council haven't been doing enough about it, there has to come a point where they have to start doing more. If not, soon the council will be running a county full of people from everywhere else but Cornwall. Some part of me feels as though that's not the future or reality that they or anyone else would want. First solution that will alleviate the housing crisis is one that many people already know. Increase the national living wage. I say living, but nowadays people are struggling to even do that. Why don't the government see this? The people that run this country are so out of touch from reality that they seem to have full confidence that the current living wage for the majority of the nation is enough to live. We've seen this is not true.
Yeah, when you look at it, average house price in Cornwall at the moment is something like £340,000. An average real wage is around about $2,200 a month. A £340,000 house, if you can find a deposit for it, it's going to cost you best part £1,700 a month in mortgage repayments, which leaves £500 a month for somebody to feed themselves, pay their fuel, electricity, and it's not enough. If you compare that to average house prices in Wales, say, which is a pretty fair comparison with Cornwall, it's around about £210,000 for an average house. How youngsters are going to cope, I've got no idea. But something does need to be done about it.
There are many key workers such as carers and those that work for the NHS who are not looked after enough, when these individuals are more important to the country than many of the things that the government decide to blow their budgets on. And now, many of these key workers are facing a reality of no longer having a home. The cost of housing compared to the living wage is a gap far greater than the Pacific Ocean. So there shouldn't be a surprise as to why many Cornwall locals are starting to go homeless. A positive to note is that the council developed a housing crisis plan. This plan is set out to spend £300 million on improving things such as rough sleeping and homelessness, creating more housing that is more realistically priced to those that are on a lower income, and creating more homes in general. Will this plan help solve the problem? Well, all we can do is wait and hope. Other solutions that will help the housing crisis, not just in Cornwall, but throughout the rest of the nation, is diving deeper into the use of modular homes. Modular homes are houses that have their pieces formed and built in a factory, and then can be assembled within a matter of days. Cornwall Council have actually started out and have ordered 29 modular one-bedroom homes, which are expected to last upwards of 60 years. This is a step in the right direction. Although these homes are aimed at the homeless and not necessarily families, who knows what the future could potentially bring.
Why there is such a thing as planning consent for holiday use only in the county. Going forward, if you're going to create affordable housing for young people and middle-aged people for that matter, and every new build should have a residential use only clause on the planning. This way, instead of developers aiming their house prices at people coming in, buying as holiday homes or second homes, you force developers then to build houses at a price to their market. That's the only thing I can think of really going forward that could help ease the situation.
Cornwall is so different to the rest of the country in terms of culture, income, and quality of life that the government with their fancy second homes, who only decide to visit when the season is right, have no idea what's actually going on down there. Although the entire country is currently facing the housing crisis, especially places like the South Hams and Devon, what makes Cornwall different is the heritage and history that a dwindling population is slowly losing. Today, I have shared with you important information and statistics that I hope shed some light on why this is such a serious issue. It affects all of us together, not even just the Cornish. My plan is to raise more awareness in the ordeal and show everyone why it's such a big problem, especially to the locals. Cornwall is a special place, and it would be sad to see it carry on the direction it's taking. These people deserve to keep their land, heritage, and homes. The road ahead is bumpy. However, from what I've seen of the Cornish firsthand, they're a tough breed. They'll battle to keep their homes until the very end. If one thing's for certain, however, these guys aren't going to go down without a fight.
Well, I met my pretty little black-eyed doll. Say where? Down by the riverside. Say where? Down by the riverside. Down by the riverside. Well, I met my pretty little black-eyed doll. Say where? Down by the riverside. Down by the riverside. She said, have patience, little man, I hope you'll understand.